I've always considered myself a highly creative person. I mean, it's just a part of my being to create things. I literally cannot not create, if you know what I mean. But have you ever had so many creative ideas that you don't even know where to start? Are you multi-talented or multi-passionate and feel like you need to finally settle down, pick a discipline, and actually stick to it instead of always changing your pursuits? Or how about this? Have you ever felt like you have to live in a square at work or school, but truly desire to share your art form with the world? That's all you want. If you answer yes to any of these things, you, my friend, are also a highly creative visionary. And you probably want some answers, right? Because let's be real, living as a creative in a linear world can be challenging. Like, you still want to thrive, you still want to have success, but you need to take a different path. But how?
You're listening to the Build Your Vision podcast, a podcast series about maneuvering the ups and downs of building a life that you're proud of, captured in real time. A community where dreamers become doers, and doers become world changers. Let's go.
Yo, what's up? This is the Build Your Vision podcast, the #1 self-leadership podcast for young visionaries who are serious, not just curious, about building a life and business they are proud of. I'm Clee, the visionary, your self-leadership coach, and it is my mission to lead you on the journey of becoming a visionpreneur, an individual who makes impact and income with their ideas, insights, and influence because someone needs what you are building. So here's what I did, guys. I sat down and I had a conversation with a productivity strategist specifically for creatives. I know, honestly, I didn't even know that existed until I found Sam Bennett. She's going to answer some of these questions for us because by understanding how your brain works as a highly creative visionary, you'll be able to build your vision with more freedom, more joy, and more intentionality. So here's the conversation.
I started as an actor. I spent my whole life acting. I was one of those kids who did all the shows in school, and I went to theater camp, and I went to school for theater, and I actually dropped out of college to get a job at the Second City Theater in Chicago, which is a famous improv comedy club. And that was it. That was my I had no plan B. Like, that was it. I was acting. And I had one of those acting careers that went well enough that you didn't want to give up on it. I mean, I worked for sure, but not well enough to support a person, right? I'm 5'11". So especially for television, like, I look like I'm about to eat. So I was a little tough to cast, but I still worked. So that meant that I had every other job on the planet. I delivered flowers. I was a barista. I was an executive assistant. I produced radio dramas. I was a Whitewater River guide. I did voiceovers for pinball machines. I did everything.
Wow.
And then along the way, I just got really interested in this question of, how do creative people make decisions? When you could kind of do anything, how do you know what to do? And how do you stick with it and follow through when kind of nobody cares? Like, there's no quarterly review on how your novel's going, right? And I noticed that I was pretty good at getting stuff done. I was producing shows. I did my own voiceover reel. I could move through stuff. And a lot of my highly creative friends had trouble with that. So I just started to think, like, well, how would you figure that out? And I just started to come up with these sort of worksheets and questions and inquiries and little imagination games and stuff. And I started teaching this class in a church basement in Van Nuys, California, to like 11 people. And maybe I charged them $75 and felt really super shy about it. But it was fun and I liked it. And they were starting to see results. I would do it once or twice a year because this is like 2001. And then in 2009, I had a day gig with a company that laid off like 2/3 of their workforce, including me. I had another thing that I thought was lined up that then fell through, and I just had this big gap in my schedule. And I was like, oh no, now I go get another day gig. Ugh. And then I thought, well, I wonder if I could do this full time. And then the teaching, at that time, the business was called the Organized Artist Company. At first, I thought I was going to do like sort of home and office organization for people, but I got out of that quick. People are nuts when it comes to their stuff. I'd much rather organize the inside of your brain than the inside of your closet. Yeah, it was great. It turned out to be super duper fun. So
let's go back to that class in like 2001. You were basically helping creative people make decisions for their life path, or like helping them choose which path to take creatively. Could you like explain that a little bit more for me, please?
Yeah. So some of them, were just people who just wanted to zhuzh up their lives a little bit more. They just were feeling a little numb maybe, and they wanted to feel more involved and more creative in their life. A lot of them were people who would self-define as creatives. So they had a show they wanted to produce, or they wanted to book more commercials, or they wanted to get a new agent, or they wanted to write a book, or they wanted to, move into some other area in their career. And so this was sort of a workshop/support group to help people move forward on whatever it was that was important to them.
Wow. So what were some of the like stories that you were hearing from people that were going through this with you? Like what was happening in their lives? What type of changes were they making?
I remember there was one guy who wanted to be a screenwriter. He was quite young, and he was very funny, and he wanted to be a screenwriter. And he was just, having a lot of trouble sitting down and writing, which is the hard part about being a writer, is that you have to sit down and write.
Right. Exactly.
It's very challenging and a lot harder than it looks. But he had a little bit of a miraculous thing happen. His Xbox broke and he did not get it repaired. And I remember we were doing this exercise where I asked people to, first of all, just tell me what their problem is. Because everybody's like, what my problem is? My problem is.
Right.
And this guy goes, my problem is, like, I talk the talk, but I don't walk the walk. And then the way this little exercise goes is I say, and then I have everybody go around the room and say, hey, let's say his name was Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey, I have this friend. He's amazing. You would love him. And he has this problem. He talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. What advice do you have for him? And it's really fun to frame up questions that way because, of course, it's so much easier to solve everybody else's problems, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
the minute you start thinking about it, like, oh, well, what would I say? And then you would have like 6 people in a row ask you this question. It's really cool. Like the first couple of answers you give are sort of your standard advice giving answers, or sort of conventional wisdom or what you say to yourself all the time in your head. But by the time you've answered it 5 or 6 times, your brain sort of starts to rattle around a little bit, and people end up saying the most amazing things. And so when we finally got around the circle and the last person was saying, so Jeffrey, I have this friend, he's amazing, you'd love him, he has this problem, he talks the talk but he doesn't walk the walk, what advice do you have for him? This kid looked up and he goes, you should tell your friend that there's nothing scary about success. And I was like, and touchdown. My work here is done. Thank you very much.
Wow.
So that's a lot of what it was. That's a lot of what I do is just help acquaint people with their own inner wisdom, with what they already know to be true.
I think like 2 episodes possibly on the fear of failure, right? And
Yeah.
it's just now in this season, I've been talking so much more about the fear of success. I've been seeing it so much. I'm like, because you have everything. What is holding you back? And they're like, well, what if it works?
What if it works?
Will I be ready?
And then everybody expects me to be great all the time. But yeah, no, the fear of success is a very real thing. And I've done it myself where like I'll have a project that I feel really great about and I'll take it from 1 to 99.5 and not do the thing that's actually going to get it out into the world or that's going to actually help it grow or succeed.
Yeah. What would you say to the person that they're listening right now and they're like, that's me? What do I do?
One thing that occurs to me is there's a difference between you and your work, right? And this thing that you've been called to do, that you're feeling called forward to do, you have to sort of humble yourself to this work. You're not 100% in charge of how it goes or how it gets received. And so when the second book was coming out, I was doing some work with a coach. First of all, that would be my step one. Get a coach, get a mentor, get a teacher, get somebody that you love and respect and trust, and who you feel like loves and respects and trusts you, and who has done what it is you want to do.
Yes. Yes.
Not to run down any of my brothers and sisters in the personal development world, but there are a lot of people out there who what's happening on stage is very different than what's happening backstage, and there's a lack of integrity there. So find the person who's done what you want to do and pay them whatever they want to be paid. I had paid hundreds, well over $100,000, and I'd do it again in a minute. I don't know how people do it without it. But my second book was coming out, and I was working with a coach to help clear up any of this, internal barriers to success. And I was kind of freaking out about all the interviews I had coming up. And all of a sudden, I had this sort of blaze of insight, and I went, oh my gosh, it's not my book.
Wow.
And he goes, what do you mean? I said, it's not my book. He said, what does that mean? I said, I don't know, but I feel like I just took off like a 10,000-pound suit of armor. And as I talked through it more, I realized, I think it's the way people who have children must feel. When your child goes out and does something amazing in the world, That's not your success, that's theirs. I mean, yes, you had something to do with it. They came through you, they're part of you, but they're themselves. And when I finally got that about my book, like, no, the book is the book. The book gets to be out there and people get to have their own experience of it. And it doesn't really have all that much to do with me. So I can like love it and be proud of it, but it's not me. It's not my book.
Yeah, that definitely, and I incorporate faith into everything that I do. And when I hear that, I think of, well, if I feel called to this, clearly something bigger than me had to call me to it, right? And the work is the work. I'm the vessel. And once the work is out there, that is beyond me because I wasn't the one that called myself.
Exactly. And to understand that, you know, this person that you are that got delivered this idea, right? You didn't ask to be this way.
Right.
Right? You didn't ask to be this smart or this inquisitive or this curious or this sarcastic or this have this sense of color or design or gift for healing or whatever it is that you are. You just arrived this way. So these were your gifts, right? This is what was given to you. What do we do with gifts? We give them, we share them with the world.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not really your business how it's received. And, you know, as a friend of mine always reminds me, God did not bring you this far to leave you behind now. So
Exactly. Because people have this weird thing, especially, and I deal with a lot of church folk, and it's weird, but like they have this thing of between business and ministry, and they feel awkward or strange charging for their gifts because they're so used to the church atmosphere where you just give, right? And we're like, well, giving doesn't mean that you do everything for free. If you had the cure for cancer, would you just say, well, you know, I don't want to be too aggressive. I don't want to really make anyone feel weird. I want to be pushy. Like, no, you have they need the cure and you have it. Be bold about it. Be excited about it. And provide the service because you would feel like a terrible person if you had something that could help somebody else and you withheld it from them for your reasons.
Well, that's exactly right. I had a friend tell me right when I was first starting, he said, you know, Sam, do you think what you do helps people? And I'm like, yeah, I think it does. And it goes, then you have an obligation to grab them by the lapels a little bit and say, you know, hey, get in here because you have something important. Yeah. I always say, you know, this cult of, you know, there's a poverty consciousness a lot in the arts, a lot in churches and other religious organizations, and it doesn't do anybody any favors. You know, it really doesn't help. Sales is a sacred exchange of energy. So I come with my gifts and skills and talents, and I create a container for you to do it as you want to do. And you come with your good intentions and your hard work and money. And that's how we make this sacred exchange of energy. And when we think about other sacred exchanges of energy, like a hug is a sacred exchange of energy. Well, if I hug you and you're just standing there, that's awkward. It doesn't feel good to anybody, right? We both need to be participating, right? And what I notice is if I don't charge, people don't pay attention.
Yeah, literally pay attention.
Literally pay attention. Exactly. Spot on.
Yeah. So I know I hear this a lot in the community, right? I have all these different things. I can sing. I'm good at math. I got an engineering degree. I can draw, you know, I can stitch, I can sew. I don't know what to do. I can't do everything and do it well. How do I choose which path to take? What would you give to the person that's just in that creative confusion?
Okay, first of all, I want to say this is not a character defect. There is nothing wrong with you. You are what is known as a highly creative person. Let's make a distinction between creative and artistic.
Oh, okay.
Right? Everyone is creative. Not everyone is artistic. Creativity has to do with innovative problem solving. If you have ever solved a problem differently than anybody else has ever solved the problem, congratulations, you are a creative genius. Right? And everybody has that. Everybody has that thing that they're like, I don't know, I've just always been really interested in it. You know, I just love gardening. I love reading all about it. I'm there with my seed catalogs in February. I just love it, you know, or I just love Chinese pottery, or I just love the ballet, or I love whatever, you know, go-karts, whatever it is. You know, people have that thing that they just love. And they're great at it. And that's super exciting and fun. Highly creative people have a lot of those things. We're good at a lot of things. We can pick things up really easily, which means we don't develop much in the way of patience. Sometimes if we're not good at something right away, we're tenacious, but we're not very patient. And it can seem to the rest of the world very confusing. It can seem like we're dilettantes or like we're flaky or like, well, you should just focus on one thing. Okay, people who like to focus on one thing should focus on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those of us who like to focus on several things should focus on several things. I created a bit of a prison of desire for myself in my 20s and 30s because I was so focused on acting. Even though I had all these other skills, I was, I was a good writer then too. But I had this focus of like, no, only acting matters. Only acting, only the money I make from acting matters. Only the achievements I have in acting matters. None of this other stuff matters. And finally, after torturing myself, I realized, wait a minute. The person who writes is the same person who's an actor, is the same person who loves to do needlepoint, is the same person who loves to, craft and do fun things, is the same person who loves to make dinner, is the same person who loves to work out. Like, this is all of me. Mm-hmm. And it was the thing I really loved about acting, and particularly improvising, is that I got to bring all of myself to what I was doing, right? Acting used all of me, who I was physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, psychically, creatively, comedically, like all of me got to show up. And it was the thing I hated about having my day gigs is I felt like I was leaving 2/3 of myself in the car.
Yes.
They didn't care who I was.
Right.
Creatively or spiritually or comedically or sexually or any way. They just wanted me to come in and do the thing and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And it was torture for me. It was torture. And so entrepreneurship is the only other thing I ever found other than acting that engaged my whole self.
Yes.
Where I was like, oh my gosh, this entire business is an art project.
Yeah.
My accounting is an art project. My marketing is an art project. My sales conversations are an art project. The podcasts I do are an art project. Like, it's all engaging all of me. And that's what's made it so fun. So make sure that you find a place where you are valued for being all the things that you are. There's a book by a guy named Kip Tindell called Uncontainable. Kip Tindell founded the Container Store.
Yes. I love going to the Container Store.
I love the Container Store. So beautiful in there. Like, all the books, all the things. He says one of his keys to success is he hires people who are what he calls 3-in-1. They have so many skills and talents that it's like hiring 3 people.
Wow.
He's like, that's how you grow your business. That's how you have a success, is when you've got somebody who's like, yes, I'm hiring them as my executive assistant, but they also do graphic design and they're also great at, systems management or whatever. And that's what I do too. I hire geniuses and I pay them whatever they want and I let them pretty much do whatever they want. So go where you're celebrated. Don't stay where you're tolerated. Go where you're celebrated and make your own path. Like, there's no reason you can't be the vegan plumber who has a side business in flower arrangement. Like, you can do that. You're allowed.
Yeah. I feel like I've talked about this over like the past, like so many episodes, but it's okay because it's going to be someone's first time listening to the podcast. So it's fine. We came across this, I think it was at the end of the last season where I talked about this thing called layering because, in entrepreneurship, right? So like Build Your Vision podcast, you build a life and business that you're proud of, right? In business, they tell you, the riches are in the niches. I think maybe 2 episodes ago, we talked about that exact same thing. And before then, we talked about this concept of layering instead of narrowing, where you are going deeper with who you are instead of narrowing who you are. So, you say like the plumber who's vegan that also does flower arrangements, like that is your lane. Like, totally. And no one else is going to do it how you can do it, because how many other plumbers are also vegan and like to have flower arrangements with their customers or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's an incredible differentiator. And people run in tribes, right? Seth Godin wrote that wonderful book, Tribes. So the people who, are into veganism are probably going to like the other things that you do too, right? So you can communicate with them around the things that you all affiliate with, that you all cathect to, like, I also love the South of France. I also love Bikram yoga. I also love glass beads. So even if what you're doing is fairly straightforward, you can share these other passions. The other way to niche too, and I think this gets overlooked quite a bit, is not just demographically, but psychographically.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Where are people struggling? So this question of exactly what you're saying, like, I've got a grillion ideas all the time, right? That's one of the characteristics of a highly creative person.
Yep.
I love nuance and subtlety and gray area, not into black and white thinking, not into orthodoxy, which is awesome and means that we will overcomplicate A paper bag.
Yes.
There's an opportunity to overthink it. Oh, we'll overthink it.
Uh-huh.
Suspicious of anything that's too popular,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The minute somebody says like, "Oh my God, you've got to see this movie," you're like, "Oh great, no, I'm never going to see it."
Yep.
I can't count how many people are on my list are like, "Oh, I've never seen Harry Potter because everybody told me how much I would love it."
Exactly.
Well, okay. And again, that's super, you're right to be suspicious of trends and things that are too popular. On the other hand, sometimes we miss important trends because we're so busy going, "I'm not jumping on that bandwagon."
Right. Against the grain. Yeah.
Right. So these characteristics that make up the highly creative person, when I start weaving that kind of language and those kind of stories into my marketing, I become like the whistle only dogs can hear. And all of a sudden the people who are into me are like, like, wait, she's talking to me.
That's how I felt when you were just saying that. I was like, that's me. That's me. So I know the person that's listening to this right now is in their car or working out like, oh my gosh, she's talking to me right now.
Yeah. I got a call from a friend of mine a while ago who was driving cross country, and he was listening to the book. I think her name is Dr. Elaine Aron, about highly sensitive people. And somehow he had not heard of this book or this thing that this existed of a highly sensitive person. He was like, "Where has this book been?" It's like, "I can't believe it. She's saying things like literally verbatim conversations I have had." And I'm like, "Yeah, because you're a highly sensitive person."
Yeah.
And some highly creative people are also highly sensitive. They tend to be pretty high IQ, high EQ people, but not all of them. And again, there hasn't been much to help identify them because we think of creative as artistic. But they're the person who's, they work in the IT department and they're sitting in the back of the room with their arms crossed going, "This is boring," but they're the genius who can solve anything. They're the third grade teacher who's doing incredible things. And I will say too, that one of the only biological markers I've found in my completely unscientific study of this is really just mostly anecdotal. I think we always knew that the right brain, left brain thing wasn't really a thing. Like, it's an interesting construct, but it's not really a
Really?
thing.
I've always thought that was such a thing. So please explain.
Yeah, no, it's scientifically, it's not. I mean, there are definitely different parts of the brain that are responsible for different things, but it's not quite so black and white as that. However, highly creative people tend to be more both-brained and more both-brained more of the time. So they make more connections between more things more of the time, which is how we're able to piece together unusual ideas in unusual ways.
Yeah.
Why we're able to do such innovative thinking. And why we have those great flashes of insight and intuition that just sort of come to us, and everybody else is like, "How did you think of that?" And you're like, I don't know. And that's micro pattern recognition, who knows? Yeah, it's one of the things that's super fun to be a highly creative person, because your brain is kind of going all the time. On the other hand, your brain is going all the time.
All the time.
It's so exhausting.
No, that's really good to hear, because I've never really considered myself an artist, even though I consider what I do an art form. And I definitely have a million ideas a minute. And I believe, and people will argue this all the time, because I feel like there are a lot of creative purists out there. So they don't want to be mixed in with, a certain whatever. I think everyone's creative, right? Because God created us to create, because we're made in his image.
That's right.
So everyone creates to a certain degree. Do you think, because you said a highly creative person, do you think there are levels to creativity? Because I know for me, and that's why I call myself Clee the visionary, because I'm always thinking like in the future. I'm having a million ideas. And I know people that work with me, they're like, "Dude, I like working with you because you have all the ideas, and I get the thrill of like implementing. Like, I like putting the puzzle together. I'm not that great at that part. I'm like, I just think everything. I'm like, this is amazing. And how are you going to do it? I'm like, I don't know." But so yeah, what do you think? Is there a spectrum when it comes to that?
Definitely. And yes, like I said, I think everyone is creative in some way or fashion. I think we've done the word creative a real disservice, because as you say, I think there are some people who are like, no, creativity is like this special little bubble that's just for some of us.
Right.
And I think there's other people who feel like creative is something scary or weird, or like, I don't want to be like that. No, I'm not creative. No. Don't say that. And certainly, there was a study not too long ago where CEOs were like, "Oh yes, the number one quality we want to see and our team members is creativity." No, they don't.
Right. If you really knew what you were saying right now,
are you kidding? Any more than they want it in school. Like, "Oh yeah, we want everybody to be creative." No, you don't.
No,
you
you
want
don't.
them to sit in a row and do the things that you ask them to do without talking back too much. We're saying, "Why are we doing this again? What's the can I get a greater context on this? Can I, you know, like they don't want
That
that.
was me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And like, I got in trouble all the time for not doing homework because I was like, this
All
is
the time.
stupid.
Yes.
The stuff I was interested in, I got in trouble, but I certainly got a good talking to about like, well, Samantha, of course you got good grades in English and drama, but you know, what about French? What about, you know, what about calculus? And I'm like, and now here I am later, like, gosh, I've made a lifelong career out of English and drama.
Yeah.
French and calculus haven't come up so much.
Exactly.
I was never going to be good at French and calculus. It wasn't a lack of applying myself. It wasn't a lack of intelligence. It just, my brain doesn't do that. It doesn't go that way. And I don't know why there's this emphasis on like, it only counts if it's hard.
Right.
Right. And this is circling back to something you were saying earlier about how people feel like, oh, well, if it's my spiritual gifts or it's something that I just do naturally, is that okay to charge for it? Oh, honey, you get to charge 10 times more than everybody else.
Exactly.
Because you have this aptitude, because you can work so much faster, because you see things other people don't see. I mean, who do you want as a doctor? The one who really had to grind and study hard and think about every little thing? Or the person who's just naturally gifted as a healer? No, give me the naturally gifted healer. No.
I don't want you having to work hard on me. No.
Don't have to go consult the textbooks. Like, I want you just to know. Fix me.
That's funny. I think you kind of talked about this a little bit. I do want to lean in a little bit because I know when they hear it, they're like, oh, this makes sense. But when it comes to real life, things get kind of cloudy again. So someone can have great ideas, right? And they're like, oh, this idea is great. But sometimes you get ideas that this is going to take some time to manifest, right? This is not I do it and it happens. Like this is going to have, like, let's say like growing an audience or something like that, right? I have this idea. Or a playwright, right? A musical. I know you've done a musical.
Yeah.
Those things take time to put together. How should a creative person manage their focus while they're in the building process? Because life's still happening every day.
So true. So I have a couple of answers for you. The one is the thing that I say all the time. If you're with me for more than 5 minutes, we're probably going to hear me say this. 15 minutes a day, every single day. Before you check your email, before you check your email, spend 15 minutes on whatever that project is that's important to you. Okay. And that way you are making steady incremental progress, you know, and just follow the sparkly breadcrumbs. You know how it is. Sometimes you take these little tiny steps and it's like the world comes rushing at you. The universe, you know, like all of a sudden just God answers every prayer. You're like, wow, that was easy. You know, other times you start, it's like a lot of knees and elbows. It's not really going right. And you know, it's like, you're like, okay, well, maybe now's not the right time. So like follow the sparkly breadcrumbs, follow the energetic pull of the thing and see where it leads you, and make sure that you are enjoying the process of the work and the person you are becoming as you do the work.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I wrote a thing years ago called why a career in the arts is like fishing for trout. And it says, you know, because it kind of doesn't matter what equipment you have or how long you've been doing it. You know, every year there's some 9-year-old who comes up into these trout fishing things and like wins the whole thing. You're like, what? You know, they're holding this giant fish. You're like, how did they do that? I remember we took my nephew fishing one time. He'd been watching these fishing shows on TV and he really, 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 really wanted to go fishing. He was maybe 6 or 7. And so we got the poles and the things and went out to the lake near where I lived. And we're probably about 25, 35 minutes into it. He comes stomping off the pier and he goes, this isn't fishing. This is waiting. I'm like, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong. Exactly.
He's not wrong. And yeah, so the thing about fishing is you have to enjoy the process of fishing.
Yeah. You
have to love standing there in all kinds of weather. Fishing for trout, and sometimes you get a trout and sometimes you don't. Same thing with the projects and the ideas that you have. Like you have to be a little in love with the idea, and you have to be in love with the process and who you become as a result of that. And again, as a highly creative person, you're going to have a ton of ideas, and you should be tracking all of those. You should be capturing them, right? And someplace where you can retrieve them. Stop writing them in journals that you're never going to look at again. That's not helpful. Put them, you know, online, put them in I like index cards, you know, however you want to do it. Voice memos, something you can name and tag and retrieve for when you need it. And sometimes, you know, I mean, several times I started writing screenplays. I got about a third of the way through and I was like, no.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, this isn't it. This isn't doing it for me. I've learned what I needed to learn doing this, mostly is that I don't like writing screenplays. Like, and it's okay to, stop things if they're not working. You can be done. You don't have to finish everything that's on your plate. You're not depriving children in Africa if you don't,
Exactly.
you don't finish broccoli on your plate. It's okay.
And it helps clear your brain space too, because the fact that you did it and you went for it, like, say for me, like, I was like, oh, I need to do YouTube, right? Because you're seeing all these podcasts on YouTube. And I tried to be a YouTuber for like a summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, the video thing that's not really like, I don't get the same type of whatever that I get from theater of the mind with audio. I just don't,
Right.
So I was like, at some point I'll hire a YouTube guy.
Exactly. And that's another great way to, when there isn't a right way, there is no right way to be an entrepreneur. There's no right way to have a podcast. There's no right way to be an artist. There's no right way to be a parent or a friend.
Mm-hmm.
There's just your way. Yeah. So you've got to lean into what your way is and do the things that you are naturally good at, that you kind of like. Whenever people are resistant to marketing is storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, well, what, how do you want to interact with your people? Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to do magic tricks for them? Do you want to dance with them? Do you want to whip them? Danielle Laporte used to have a thing called the Daily Whip. Like, she'll whip you. Like, do you want to joke with them? Do you want to preach to them? Like, what is another verb that you like?
Yeah.
That you can and if I think like, oh, I would love to waltz with them. Mm-hmm. Well, that brings to mind a whole rhythm and a way of speaking and a way of being and a certain formality. Like, there's a whole world there, right? I will also say, and this may seem a little random, but it's on my mind to say it, make sure you are doing something, at least on a fairly regular basis, that you're kind of terrible at. Okay. Like, humble yourself, for a long time I did CrossFit. I did, like really hard workouts. And I was terrible at it. I'm doing burpees. I look like a drunken panda getting up and going. I'm 20 years older than everybody else in the room. Like, it's, but I was kind of good at lifting heavy things. The rest of it I was terrible at. They're like, go run a mile. I'm like, I've got big boobs. Girls with big boobs don't run. Run. I will walk speedily. How about that? And it was humbling. And I was there sweating and crying and spitting. And, but as a leader and as a CEO and as a public person, it was really important for me to come up against that wall twice a week and be like, wow, I'm really terrible at this. And I get to sit in the humility of being terrible at it. And I get to sit in the fear of, I don't know if I can do this. And remember that this is how my clients feel. Mm-hmm. They don't feel about this. Yeah. But it's how they feel about their lives or about other things.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that makes you feel like, I'm not very good at this, like, do that, take singing lessons or just go somewhere where you can right size yourself,
Yeah, that's everything you said is amazing. I definitely, the 15 minutes a day, and you have a whole book out about this, get it done. I encourage people, I'll link it in the show notes. That is something, now I didn't call it 15 minutes a day, but it's something I encourage for sure. And I call it the Hollywood method, right? Look, I've turned my life into almost like a television show or a movie, and every single day is an episode. And like you see on Netflix, right? There's a summary, there's an objective for that episode. What am I accomplishing just today, right? That's all I'm focusing on. Now, of course, you got to have the vision process so you know where you're headed, right? And that's what I really lean into with the whole visionary thing. But where are you heading and what are you going to do today? It doesn't have to be for very long, to help you get toward that goal. And it's actually the consistency over a long period of time accumulated is way more effective than the tenacity over a short period of time over and over again. And each time you become less confident in yourself because you broke the last promise that you made,
That's exactly right.
So yeah, I love that concept. I really do.
Yeah, no, it's true. We build respect and esteem with other people by keeping our promises to them. We build self-respect and self-esteem by keeping our promises to ourselves. So lower the bar, make it super easy for yourself. Like I said, 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. Yeah. I mean, when I was an actor, that was my deal with myself, is I had to do something every single day for my acting career. Yeah. And sometimes it was go on set and tape a sitcom. Other times it was call my agent, learn a new monologue, go to acting class,
Yep.
do my vocal exercises. Like it could be something really little, but it had to be something. The other nice thing about 15 minutes, especially for highly creative people, is it does give us an endpoint too.
Yeah.
You know, because we have big lives. We've got a lot of other stuff going on. And we have this feeling of like, oh, I want to write all day. I want to do this. I need 6 months. I need all this time. It's like, well, I would love to have a villa in Provence for 6 months too.
Right.
But that's not happening today. So, at least let's do this. And you can see, if you played guitar for 15 minutes a day, every day for a week or a month or a year or 6 years or 60 years, in not very long of a time, you would be a much better guitar player.
Yes. Absolutely.
You write for 15 minutes a day. You can write between 200 and 250 words a day. In less than a year, you could have a 50,000 word book.
Yeah, you could. Exactly. I think we underestimate. Of course, you've heard the quote, like we overestimate. I think it was Tony Robbins, overestimate what you could do in a year, but underestimate what you could do in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to do an episode. This is a little like foreshadowing. I wrote down this concept like last week, and it was called "How much can you accomplish if you did the bare maximum?" Basically, you doing maximum quality with minimum quantity. And we kind of flip that usually. Time we do like poor quality, but we do like a lot.
A lot of it. Yeah. I talk sometimes about when people say like, where do I focus? Where do I start? I ask, well, what are your highest income producing activities? And what are your highest joy producing activities?
Okay.
And I would focus on those two things. And if you're looking to create time in your life, find the things that are your lowest income producing activities and your lowest joy producing activities and cross those off the list.
Right. And I was going to ask kind of with you, we talked about layering, right? Do you say, because I see what you're doing with, teaching, coaching, writing, those are income producing activities for you, and you have layered all those other things that make you into that. Do you prescribe leading with that income generating activity and then having the other ones kind of, or the other way around? Some people do it flipped.
Yeah, I have to start with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to lead with anything, I'm going to lead with morning prayer and meditation. That's the part of it that's kind of non-negotiable for me. And I find when I don't do that, things go off the rails really fast. And part of that too is engaging in the mystery of it, right? Because we don't always know what our highest income producing activities are. I said next to a guy in the airplane the other day who half an hour into the conversation, he was like, oh my God, I have to hire you to come in and train my sales team. I'm like, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Good talk. So it turned out sitting in, seat 1A and having a conversation with the guy in seat 1B was the high income producing activity. But yeah, I mean, money is important. I mean, money's not the only thing, but it's not nothing either. And it gives you a lot of choices and a lot of freedom. And I spent a long time being super, super broke and really proud of how broke I was and how good I was at being broke. I can do things with beans and rice that you have no idea. Mm-hmm. I can make a nickel look a lot like a dollar. Like it's, I was good at it and I was proud of it. And like I said, there's this sort of martyrdom and this kind of poverty consciousness around all this, right? And finally I realized like, there's no shortage of money in the world.
Exactly.
There is an infinite amount of money in the world. There's an infinite number of ideal clients. And I have an infinite number of ideas and creative ways to help people. So when abundance meets abundance, there's no lack, there's no competition, there's no scarcity anywhere. And if you would like to have more money, you are going to have to focus on the money, right? I have this planner that I created, and for every day it's got what we call a could-do list, because to-do is too much pressure, but could do these things. And then it says, what's the thing? And then how much time do you think it's going to take? And how much money is involved, either going in or coming out? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you feel like doing it? What's your inclination? How much do you want to? And it's because it's just so easy to be like, oh, okay, I got to invoice so-and-so for, $500. Oh God, invoicing such a drag. I'll do it tomorrow. It's like, no, Sam, it's $500. Let's do that today. Let's do that first. Let's do it twice. Come on. Let's pay attention.
As we come to a close, I want to ask this question that I've just started recently asking. If you were 21 with no money, no name recognition, no network, how would you build your vision from the ground up, step by step?
Well, I mean, I did do that at 21, and then I did it again at 30 when I moved to Los Angeles, and I did it again at 42 when I started my business. And I think the number one thing that's always been most important is to get into community. Get around other people who are doing what you want to do, who are better at what you want to do than you are. Play tennis with better tennis players. I am very shy and very introverted, despite the way I appear. And I would not describe myself as much of a joiner. However, everything comes to us through other people.
Mm-hmm.
God comes to us through other people. Love comes to us through other people. Money comes to us through other people. So I took non-paying jobs at production companies. I volunteered at a theater. I worked for years at a theater company in LA. Even when I had day gigs, I tried to work in production, work in casting, like being around the business I wanted to be in, making friends with the people. Because, especially in Hollywood, but really anywhere, if you're going to be stuck all day, in a small trailer in the middle of the Mojave, it's 900 degrees out, like niceness counts. You want to be around the people that you like and you trust and you can have a pretty good time with. And I know people complain, like, people just hire their friends. Of course they do. And when you're in a position of power, you also will hire your friends. Mm-hmm. So that was it. Finding a church, finding a community, finding a place to, class, finding groups of people that shared my values and loved me and cared for me. Being in the arts and being an entrepreneur can be a lonely, lonely, lonely business.
Absolutely.
And being a highly creative person can be lonely because, again, the world's not really made for you. So go where you're celebrated. Don't stay where you're tolerated. Go where you're celebrated. And find the communities of people and just find the people who are doing what you want to do and get with them in whatever way you can get with them.
Yeah. So you have the psychographics, right? When you throw in the demographics as well, where I'm in some communities that I absolutely love, but I am by far the youngest person in there, probably by about 15, 20 years.
For sure.
So I'm like, we could go out, but we're talking about two different things, So having that extra layer of like, oh, these are my people, and we're all kind of in the same like period of our journeys together, it's a whole nother level of chemistry.
Absolutely. It's so great. And it's, it's y'all's turn now. And you do this incredible service for those, because I'm in a community of, teachers and coaches and authors and stuff. And we're in our 50s and 60s and 70s. And we're like, well, I would love to talk to the younger people, but I don't know them. They don't want to hang out with me. I'm super old.
Yeah.
And Clee comes along like, hey, I've got a podcast. I'm like, yay.
Yeah. No, that's the thing too, right? Each one kind of like blames the other, but it's like both need to reach out and meet in the middle, This has been amazing.
We've got so much more in common than we have different.
We do.
100%.
If you had a billboard that was sponsored by Sam, everyone in the world saw this thing. It was just like on the interstate to heaven or whatever. And what would you want the message for people to read as they drove by?
It would say, by the way, you look really great today.
Yes, I saw that in your email.
Put it all over the place. I put it everywhere I can think of to put it. By the way, you look really great today. And the reason I put it there is partly I just started doing it kind of as for fun, and then people started saying it back to me. This is a good note, by the way, if you're wondering like what's working in my marketing. When people start saying it back to you, when they start teasing you about it, you're onto something. Stick with it. And I've only ever had one person sort of question me about it. And of course, he was my entertainment lawyer. Only a lawyer. And he was like, how do you know I look really great today? And I said, well, David, I know because in general, people look great. People are pretty great looking. That's just my experience, is that people look pretty great. I said, but I can prove it to you, because if I took a picture of you today and I showed it to you 20 years from now, you would go, oh my God, I look fabulous. So stop worrying about how you look or how you think you look or how you think other people think you look. And just know that you are just as God made you to be. And you are here to do the work that brings you joy and brings light to other people's lives in whatever way or fashion works for you. So get on with it.
Absolutely. I love it.
Wow. So 3 key takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, nothing is wrong with you. God designed you to be highly creative. Lean into it. Number 2, all it takes is 15 minutes a day. Commit to building your vision for just 15 minutes consistently, and your life will change. You know I'm a big advocate of the Hollywood method. I believe 15 minutes is plenty if you are consistent with it. Number 3, get in community. Surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do. If you ever listen to this show for a couple of episodes, you know you've probably heard me say this a bunch of times because I say it all the time. Community is key. And I'll throw in this bonus because we had Sam on the show. You look great today. Visionary, you can check out Sam and her books and all the stuff she has to offer on her website, therealsambennett.com. And I'll even have a link to her personal planner for creatives. All the links will be in the show notes, of course. And if you have a question about building your vision, leave a voice message for me on the podcast website, buildyourvisionpodcast.com. I'd love to hear from you, and you could possibly get featured on a future episode. The link will be in the show notes for that as well. All right, guys, I will see you in the next one. But as always, until then, keep building your vision every single day. Peace.
Executive production by Clee Davis. Music production by Clee Davis and Christian Hernandez. The Build Your Vision podcast is a product of Build Your Vision, LLC.